What does it really take to pass the ICF exam for PCC and MCC? Hi, my name is John Ryan. I'm a master trainer and coach and recently certified as a PCC. And today I want to share with you exactly how I finally passed the ICF exam and how you can do it too. And the reason I wanted to create this video was that this was one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult exams that I have ever taken. I know many other people on YouTube have also echoed that same concern. And I share that with you not to scare you, but to make sure that you know what you're getting into and make sure you're fully prepared, unlike how I was when I took it the first time. So I want to share with you all of my tips and ideas for passing the ICF exam while it's still fresh in my mind. And the first thing I want to share with you is that even though I've been in training development for nearly 30 years, been coaching professionally for over 20 years, I did not pass the exam on the first try, which I'd hope to do. And many people do that. And maybe you can do that as well. And I hope that you do. That would be awesome. I'm glad that I didn't. I feel I'm better off as a result of that. But I will tell you this, even though I'd gone through a lot of training development programs on ICF specifically, I've gone through and taken a number of tests that are mock exams to help you get prepared for the questioning and how that works. And we'll talk more about that inside this video a little bit later on. Even though I was ready for that, I was scoring at 95, 98% on the mock exams. When I went in, I opened up the first question and it was tougher than I imagined. The second question, by the third question, I realized that I was massively unprepared for the exam. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing well on the previous practice exams. I was, but there was a lot of things that were missing in my thinking that I had to fix. And I'll share with you some of those strategies as we dive a little bit deeper inside this video. And just so you know, on that first exam, I did miss it by one. If I had gotten one more right, if I'd done even one of my strategies that I'm going to share with you in here, it would have made all the difference in the world. But on the flip side of that, I do respect the exam a lot more than I did going into it. And I know that anyone who has passed this exam really knows their stuff. It's not saying that you don't know your stuff if you haven't passed it. It's just a really good demonstration of the fact that you do know your stuff by going through this exam. Now, before we dive into the specific strategies for passing the ICF, I do want to share with you a little bit of an emotional roller coaster that I went through that hopefully you can avoid by understanding what I'm about to share with you. So after the first exam, I booked it for Friday afternoon. It was a 3-hour exam. So 1 o'clock started, 4 o'clock finished. And within a few minutes, I got an email that let me know that I did not pass, that I in fact failed. So 3 weeks later, I'm doing the same thing, 1 o'clock on a Friday, 4 o'clock, finish up. And I'm expecting the same type of email, quick response of getting a pass, because this time I felt so much better and I felt that I crushed the exam, which I did a lot better on the second exam for tips I'll share with you inside this video. However, no email came. So I waited a little bit. 30 minutes later. Now it's almost 5 o'clock. It's 4:30 at this point. I'm getting concerned that ICF is about to go home and that Pearson, because I did it at home through the Pearson OnView system, is also not going to be reachable. And so I started calling the testing center. I called Pearson and I got someone on the phone and I asked about the results. And he said, it looks like you were scheduled to take it at 1 o'clock. And I kind of freaked out. I said, scheduled to take it. If I listen to the presupposition, it sounds like they had no clue that I took it. I said, I took it. I just got done. He said, oh, well, it looks like it's not done yet. And I was definitely freaking out. Wasn't sure what was going on. I said, well, we need to talk to someone to verify that I did it, because I know I did it and I need to get the results. And I tried to contact ICF and they were not available. They had gone home. And so lo and behold, I did not get the information that I was looking for right away. There was a little bit of delay, but I did find out the next day, not through email, but by checking the ICF site. So, okay, admittedly, I did check it more often than I wish because I was hoping it would come back to me, and I was happy to see that it was a pass, which is what we're about to do. We're about to talk about how can we help you get that pass on the first try or the second try, or however many tries it takes for you to pass that exam. So the first thing we want to talk about in passing the ICF exam is to understand the structure of how the exam works, how it's broken down. And we'll talk about the number of questions and timing and all that stuff in a little bit. But the basic structure is, for each question of the exam, it begins with a situation. You get to know the situation of what's going on. You're a coach, you're dealing with the client, and there's some problem that you're trying to deal with. And then there are 4 answer sets per each question or situation that you have. And what you have to do is identify which is the best answer out of the set of answers and which is the worst. So this exam is not about can you memorize the ICF Code of Ethics. It's not about can you memorize the ICF values. This is about can you take the ICF Code of Ethics and the values and what coaching is all about from an ethics, competency, and process perspective and apply it into situations. So I don't know about you, but that's different than any other test that I've ever taken, and it was quite challenging. What's easiest for most people, and myself included, is finding the best. Choosing the best options is where people typically excel. The hardest one is figuring out which option of the four choices is the worst option. And what makes that so difficult is sometimes all the answers in the answer sets of what the coach should do are actually good answers. And sometimes all of them are not so good answers. And then of the bad ones, you have to pick out which is the worst of that. Or of the good ones, you have to figure out which is the best of the good ones. So they're all fine, maybe something you would do in your coaching session, but you still have to tease out which one is the best and which one is the worst. And to help you prepare for that, of course, you have to practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. So go to the ICF Coaching Federation website and you'll see that they have some sample questions, 8 sample questions they start you off with to get you familiar with the basic concept of best and worst. So that's helpful because it does show you what the answers are for the best and worst. But where you really are going to find a lot of value is going through some of the programs that exist, and I'll mention some here in just a moment, that not only give you the questions, not only give you the answer, but also break down ideally for each answer in the answer set about whether it is a good response, whether it's the best, or whether it's the worst. And why is it the best and why is it the worst? That's what I found that really made a difference for me, is not just having the answer, but understanding the psychology of it. Here's some of the resources that I use that you might also want to consider in your preparation for ICF as well. Number one is Lissa DeHart. Check out her program. It was phenomenal. And they have online programs. They have one-on-one, you have DIY, you have group programs. Check out, see which one is right for you based on your budget and your timeline and all that type of stuff as well. You can check out Solutions Academy, as well as getting individual mentor coaching on preparing for the ICF. So I'll put links for these down in the description. Another thing you might want to do in addition to taking the mock exams and getting used to reading the situations, going through the answer sets, and differentiating between the best and the worst, to help you differentiate between the best and the worst, is you might want to internalize and even memorize the ICF Code of Ethics. The good news is there's only 8 pieces to internalize, and the letters of each one, the first letters of each one, is D, E, E, C, MLEF. That's what I memorized to help me take them with me. And if you internalize that, at least you can go through and begin to see, oh, this answer here is the best because it cultivates trust and safety, or it's embodying the coaching mindset. And so you can kind of internalize them and use them as value criteria. We'll talk more about values later on in the program to help you determine what is the best and what is the worst answers. Some of the experts in the ICF, PCC, MCC testing space recommend that you don't have to memorize them, but I know that I didn't memorize them in the first one. I didn't pass. So in the second one, I wasn't leaving anything to chance. You, of course, get to make your own decision. But not only memorize and internalize the Code of Ethics, but also go through the Insights and Considerations for Ethics document. This is also published by ICF, and it takes it even further, really describing what it looks like to embody those 8 elements in the Code of Ethics. So those would be the resources that I would go to prepare for the ICF exam if I had to do it again. Of course, if I didn't pass the second time, I would probably have to level up even more, but you get to determine where you are in your journey. So let's talk about now test taking strategies to help you pass the ICF exam. The first one is to manage your time. And if you haven't already looked into the structure of the program, the test is a 3-hour exam, but it's broken into 2 sections. with roughly 39 questions per section for a total of 78 questions. So we have 3 hours with a 10-minute break, 2 sections. And once you finish that first section, you can't go back and re-edit it after the break. So once that's locked in, you locked it in, final answer, and then you go on to the next section, and then you do the best you can in that one as well. So it's a little over 80 minutes per section. And if you think about that mathematically, just about 2 minutes per question. So the way I think about it is for every 10 questions, I need to be at a 20-minute interval. So at 10 questions in, I needed to be at 20 minutes to be on par to finish with no review time. If you want to have review time, you have to be a little bit faster paced than that. So 20 minutes for the first 10. Then after the 40-minute mark, I should be right around 20 minutes completed. That puts me roughly halfway through that first part of the exam. And then I should be finishing up 30 questions at 60 minutes. And then whatever I have left at that point, I consider that wrap up and review. So I wanted to get that done as quickly as possible so that I have time to review. Then the break starts. You can opt to not do a break. That's up to you. I recommend get up, stretch, reset, refresh, get a drink of water, take a deep breath, do whatever you need to do inside that 10-minute window, and then get right back to it. And you have 80 minutes back on the clock again. So 10 questions, 20 minutes, 20 questions, 40 minutes, and so on and so forth. And what you want to do to maximize your effectiveness here is flag the tough questions as you go. So while you're taking the questions and going through the answer sets and choosing the best and the worst, you have the ability to, what I think of as bookmarking, but inside of at least I did it with the Pearson OnView at-home testing, you can flag them. So I bookmarked them or flagged them. Might be different if you're doing it testing in person, and flag them so you can come back to them later on and review it before you submit. Now, the first time I didn't flag anything. To be honest, they were all hard. I would have bookmarked every single question. So that really wouldn't have helped me at all. And I didn't manage my time very well, so I didn't even have time to review should I have wanted to do that. So on practice sessions, I realized that I kept forgetting to flag the questions. So I forced myself to practice on the practice sessions to flag the first question. And I figured if I created the habit of flagging that first one, by the time I got there, I wouldn't get wrapped up and find myself 30 questions in without flagging any questions at all. So I'd flagged roughly 10 to 15 questions per section, and I did have time to go through each one of those flag questions before I hit submit, which was what I wanted to do. Now, the next strategy you might want to employ for taking the test is to read the questions first. That means before you read the situation and then go to the questions, read the questions first to prime yourself, and then go back and read the situation if necessary. There were many questions that I went through that I never even read the situation. All I read was the questions, because in many cases, the answers themselves were really clear about which one was the best or which one was the worst. Sometimes it was impacted by the situation. So that's why if you're going through the best and the worst, if you can just read the answers and you're like, oh, this is clearly the best and this is clearly the worst, then you just save yourself a significant amount of time that you might be able to use on more difficult questions later on inside the exam. There are some questions, though, that you go through and there's very subtle differences and it's not easy to tell, in which case you might want to go back and make sure you read the full situation and look for certain words or situational elements that might shine a light on which one is the best and which one is the worst. So not everyone likes this strategy. Some people do. I didn't do it my first time, and you know my results. I did do it the second time, and I was able to pass it. So I think that made a difference for me. Now, the question is, how do you determine which one is the best and which one is the worst? For most people, identifying the best is the easiest and most obvious. The hardest one, of course, is the worst option. Which one is the worst of sometimes all bad ideas? To do that, we need to find a way to differentiate between good, better, best, or bad, worse, worst, if that's the right terminology. One place to look for that information, how do you differentiate between the good, better, best, or bad, worse, worst, is look at the ICF values. So I'll put a link again to all of these resources inside of the description here. So look up the values, go through the code of ethics, and then as you examine the questions, you want to ask yourself which one of these most embodies the ICF values and the ICF code of ethics, and which one of these least embodies the ICF values and the ICF code of ethics. Because it's not about what would you do. I mean, you could answer that way, but if it's not in alignment with what ICF wants, you're not going to get that answer correct. So it's not about what would you do in the situation. It's about what is the ideal ICF coach. What would they do in this situation based on what's presented inside the answer sets? And some of them, you might look at the answer sets and say, I would never do any of these. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're trying to figure out, is what you would do, is what would the ideal avatar ICF coach do. And the next tip I want to share with you is probably the most important thing, the thing that I feel had the biggest difference on me passing the PCC, the ICF exam, and that was developing a values hierarchy. Like I said before, when you go through the answer sets, some of them are all good, some of them are all bad, and you have to determine based on a values hierarchy, which one is the most good, otherwise known as the best, which one is the most bad, otherwise known as the worst. Well, that can only come if you can actually identify what makes something better or what makes something worse. So what I did was I went through all the practice exams that I had, and for each question, I started thinking about what makes this the best? What is the value distinction here that makes this the absolute best? All of these perhaps are good, but what makes this better? And on the ones that are bad, what makes this the absolute worst? And I'm going to share with you a couple of the values hierarchies that I identified that worked well for me. And I think the value really comes from you analyzing test questions and determining what do you see in the best and what do you see in the worst, and helping you come up with your own values hierarchy. But here's some that I found to give you an example of what we're talking about. So what I found is a pattern of emotions versus actions. So if I had an answer set where one of them, let's say two of them were really good, and I probably would do both, but one of them focused on determining how you feel in the moment, and the other one focused on taking action. What I found more often than not was that focusing on the emotions and what's coming up for the client in the moment was typically preferable versus taking action. And their thinking typically was jumping into action too soon without considering the emotional impact could potentially be missing out on some insights. Now, again, this may not be what you do in a coaching session. You might not even agree with that philosophy, but that was one of the values hierarchy that I found a difference of. And once I started seeing that in the exams, I could quickly identify, oh, this is an emotion versus action criteria situation. And then I would choose the emotion as a response and then go from there. And the result was that I passed. So that's the only evidence that I have that this works. All right, next one on the values hierarchy could be internal versus external, kind of similar to the emotional versus action oriented, is processing internally or going in and doing some reflection or noticing what's happening inside was preferable to externalizing it, not just on action basis, but externalizing responsibility. So maybe you're a leader and you got to focus on what leadership means to you versus finding out what your team wants from you as the leader. Now, finding what your team wants from you as a leader might be a fine approach, but if it's compared to doing some soul searching and finding out what leadership means to you, I tend to find that they value the internalization rather than the externalization as a response. Now, this was a fun one for me to tease out, and I'm still not sure if this is true in all situations, but I found this as a values hierarchy for me that I think really worked well. And there may be some other people out there who would disagree, but this is what I found. A lot of times the solutions will focus on whether you do something in the moment, whether you connect to something in the past, or whether you connect to something in the future. Typically, focusing on how you feel and think and behaviors you can do in the moment, like taking a breath, getting clarity on your values, that tends to be the number one. So I'll put present tense stuff as being the top of that little hierarchy. Then we have a choice. What if there's something that's geared towards the future or the past? which one is going to be better? For example, one that came up, and I can't remember if this was from the actual ICF exam or one of the mock exams that I took as well. But in terms of differentiating, let's say a client isn't experiencing some confidence that they want to have, maybe in relation to a presentation coming up. Well, we have a couple choices, and maybe the choice sets are limited to, well, let's go back to the past and think of a time in the past when you felt confident. That would be a past-oriented solution or choice. Or imagine what it would feel like in the future if you were totally confident and you crushed that presentation. Now, which one would you do? Now, what's right is based on you and the situation and the client, but what they're looking for, what I tend to find is it's typically they're going to value future oriented versus past. Now, why is that? And you might not agree with this, but this is the rationale that kept coming up. If you focus on the past, that might be useful to do that. And often in NLP, we do that to find anchoring. To if you want to anchor confidence, to go back in a time you felt confident, felt great, and you apply it to the present. However, the past confidence may miss out on some of the nuances of the situation versus a future confidence is more customized and tailored for the present situation. You might not agree with it. You might not even see the logic in it. That's okay. But that's one of the values hierarchies that I took away with it that made a difference for me. The last tip I want to share with you, and this can really ease a lot of pressure that you might have in your mind, is that you can take the test up to 6 times in a year in a 12-month period. So the first retake has to be at least 14 days after the initial. After that, it's a 30-day waiting period, and you can take it up to 6 times in a year. So that was really comforting to me because I knew that if I didn't pass it the first time, I just had to wait a couple weeks, take it again. And if it didn't work then, I had a couple more tries I could do, and I would keep on taking it until I was successful. So I hope that takes off some of the pressure that you might be experiencing going forward. So those are my thoughts and ideas from recently passing the PCC. I hope you found it helpful. If you wouldn't mind, drop a comment down below and let me know what was your greatest takeaway from this video. And of course, once you pass the PCC or MCC ICF exam, let us know down here in the comment section so we can celebrate with you. Until next time, develop yourself, empower others, and lead by example.